Welcome to those that are coming in. My name is Amy. I'm here with Citizens for Traditional Values. Eileen McNeil and I are so excited and honored to have you with us. We've had over 80 people RSVP for this evening, so this is going to be a very robust conversation. State Representative Jamie Thompson is just slipping in. We have Phil from State Representative Gina Johnson's office is with us to give us an update, and some other distinguished guests. It is 7 o'clock, and if you are new to Amy's world, we like to run things on a tight ship. So we want to honor all of your time tonight. My name is Amy Hawkins, and I will continue to let people in. I'm here on behalf of Citizens for Traditional Values. I'm going to be kind of the whisperer in the background, just making sure things are running. I am going to open us up in prayer and then turn it over to Eileen McNeil, our awesome president with Citizens for Traditional Values. We are very glad to have you all here tonight. We've had over 80 people RSVP. We've got a couple legislative offices represented. We've got a couple pastors that are on, which makes us so excited. And some education activist warriors from around the state. We hope that our goal with this is to just remind everyone that the education effort, while we all were dealing with a lot of things last year with the State Board of Education, and it can feel like, okay, that battle's over. Now we go back to normal, right? Wrong. We know that there is a huge need in the education arena for more good men and women of faith and of principle to be engaged. And so this is our desire to create this forum where you all can connect with one another. Make sure you say hello in the chat, connect with each other. And we hope that when you hang up tonight, you will walk away not only feeling more informed, but also encouraged and have a very clear direction on a couple easy next steps. So with that, let's open in prayer. And then Eileen, I'll throw the ball to you. So Father God, we welcome you tonight to this conversation of amazing men and women from around the state. We declare that you are Lord over the state, over our families, over education. And we ask for divine wisdom tonight. We ask for divine revelation. And we ask, Lord, we give you this education movement. And we ask that you would do your purpose with it. I pray your sweet blessing on every person here. May this be an hour of encouragement, truth, and motivation as we look to how can we serve the education arena more effectively. In Jesus' name, amen. Eileen, our president, welcome, and the ball is in your court.
Great. Happy 2026, everyone. Yay. So where does our battle begin, and where does it sit now? I think you all know, but in case for those of you who don't, in CTV, we are a nonprofit. We are engaged in getting citizens activated, engaged in the culture, in the political arena, in the public arena, everywhere that, God has talked about. We want to be there too as Christians with our values being represented. And one of those big ones is education, and fundamentally affirming to our culture that, God has given parents the authority to guide and direct our children's education, not the government. Our authority is also reinforced by our own Michigan state statute and our U.S. Constitution, the First Amendment, and actually just recent Supreme Court cases. I think many of you know Mahmoud v. Taylor was a big case that happened this year that reinforced the parents' fundamental right to guide and lead and direct the education and care of their children. In election years, just so you know, CTV does get involved in candidate endorsements. We to help educate Christians and others on who stands where on our key issues that concern life from conception to death. And assisted suicide has been has been introduced in Michigan again last year. Family, education, and a limited government philosophy. But we engage, I'm not going to go into it today, but we engage the church in elections with our voter guides once we do candidate endorsements. But this year, right now, we know, and we all thank you so much. Many of you, most of you were in the battle in October and November on the education front. And we fought the State Board of Education in their attempt to expand the curriculum for health class to include all these other sex topics, such as sexual orientation and gender identity, into health class, which is not optional, which is a required class, as well as inserting it into the sex ed classes, which is actually against state law. State law doesn't mention sexual orientation or gender identity. And they chose to include it in their health standards anyway. They have a majority and kind of brought it home to everybody. Majorities matter. The state school board, they're elected by us. We've got to change that state school board this year. That's another big election that we can get involved in so that we don't always have to be fighting these battles. Let's get our people, elected to those seats also. But what we want to talk about tonight is kind of just all right, now we're in 2026. We lost that one battle, but we haven't lost the war because now all that curriculum, those standards, your local school districts, and many of you know this better than me, are all going to be determining what their curriculum is in the fall. I mean, you're probably not going to see much of it right now, but they'll start reviewing, probably May, June, July in preparation for the fall. And if they are going to, if your local school district chooses to have a sex education class, they are guided, they have to be guided by our state law that includes a sex education advisory board. And I want to talk a little bit, and others will talk a little bit more about that because that's where we can make a difference. One, the law says that board must be majority of parents, clergy, and community, not just school administrators and teachers. And that's where you have a big voice and can make an impact. And honestly, some school districts haven't put this in place, and nobody's ever called them out on it, or they put it in place with the wrong people. So that's where they woke us up too, because I think we not everybody was tracking this, and so the state school board woke up the population to say, hey, wait a minute, who's on our sexual sex ed advisory boards? And so that's one area that we're going to talk about, and how do we have representation and people going to the school boards and listening. Who's the best way is to get a team, three people around you. There's four of you, divide up, each one take one meeting, one school board meeting a month, and just keep on it. So we're listening, that we're at the meetings on your local school districts in your areas. And then when you start hearing them talk about, okay, we're going to be talking about our sex education class and discussing this advisory board, you know when that discussion's going to be, the questions to ask. We've prepared a 2-page, or it's actually a 1-pager on this in our CTV website, and Amy will share it tomorrow too. Kind of the questions that you should ask. And secondly, if you had that team around you, we want you to run for school board or recruit a friend, recruit somebody to run for school board. July 21st is the filing deadline. So we got some time. You got some time to look around, think about who might do it. And they won't do it unless they know they have your support. Anyone running knows it's work. But I think, we have an opportunity. And Matt Wilkes, I don't know if Matt's on today. I think he's at another meeting, but he's doing the school board training tomorrow. For anyone who's really thinking about it right now, he's doing a school board training to teach you how to run. And we'll send that link to you. It's a Zoom. You don't have to leave your house. But overall, we want to grow this movement. And part of our goals at CTV is also to do with clergy. We want to engage our clergy, not only for election reasons, because they talk to people. They talk to a lot of people every single week. And thank you. I know we have some pastors on the call today, and we have some wonderful pastors engaged and involved. We need more. But I'm asking my predecessor and founder of CTV, James Moffett, to talk about the clergy and why does the clergy matter to this battle and why they matter to CTV. And then Andy Shaver is a pastor we're going to have who actually did get involved in how he's going to share why he ran and how you might approach your own pastors based on his experience. So, James, take it
Hey,
away.
everybody. Thank you guys. Appreciate the good work you're doing, Eileen and Amy. The battle last year with the Board of Education really did crystallize a lot of the principles CTV's been standing for since I started way back in the 80s. And just so everybody knows, the issue of parental authority over kids is not new. I had a lawmaker tell me in 1990 that parents procreate, but we educate. And he was telling me that parents really weren't the right people to teach sex education to the kids because they really didn't know what they were talking about. So this arrogant attitude that strips power away from parents and puts it in the hands of educators and or bureaucrats, it's not new. I mean, the kids are always the target of every nefarious deed. And I think this is being done probably with good motives, at least by some, but it's just so backward from God's ordained pattern of life. And what leads to the good life for kids is, and so we have a public education system that's stated very clearly, parents aren't welcome in this topic and in this subject. And not only that, but parents don't need to be informed if my kid is transitioning, or parents don't need to be informed if my kid needs or wants an abortion. They don't need to be informed, about lots of things. And so what we have at the very, very root of it is a parental rights crisis. And when you talk about pastors, they're people too. They're citizens just like the rest of us. They have to live under the same laws. And we had a meeting with home educators today, and they were telling us that most pastors in this state have kids in the public school. So
Yeah.
this isn't just an interest of a pastor saying, "Oh, well, I'm going to, talk about something that my congregation needs to know." This is real for every person in the state of Michigan, not just for
Yeah.
pastor versus non-pastor. So,
Right.
so it's important to not put pastors in this category of somehow, they ought to be doing more. And I think that's one thing that will get you nowhere with pastors is if you go sit in their office and start beating them up for not doing enough. So my advice is to have a conversation and ask lots of questions and to educate in bite-sized information. I had a lady once when I was pastoring in a church. She came in with about a 6-inch high stack of papers, and she was really, really concerned about an issue. And she stuck it on my desk and she says, "If you just read this, you'll know what you need to know." And you know what I did? I basically threw it in the garbage. I mean, I couldn't, there's no way I could read and digest all of that information. I got too many other things going on. So just remember, pastors are people. And so when we talk about CTV and us engaging and working with clergy, what we're trying to say is that we're all citizens and we all have a duty, a responsibility, a God-ordained responsibility to be citizens both of heaven and citizens of earth. And I think where the church often gets a little bit myopic or sidetracked is we're really good on teaching people how to be good citizens of heaven. We're not so good about teaching people how to be good citizens on earth. And that's where that's where our feet are on the ground. So that's our interest. How can we guarantee leadership over us in the State Board of Education, in the state legislature, in the courts, in the local school boards, in the curriculum committees, in the city councils, and in the township boards, and in the library board? How can we ensure that people who are making decisions on our behalf in all of those positions are people who would represent that set of core values? Well, the only way to do it, ladies and gentlemen, is to be involved in politics. There is no other avenue. You can't stick your head under the rock and expect the problems are going to go away. You can't go out and win a battle and say, oh, great, our job's done. And if you lose a battle, you can't get so discouraged that you don't come back. And this is what I told people since 1986 when I first got involved is once you engage and understand your role as a citizen, you can never go home because the battle never stops. They're never going to stop trying to get your kids. They're never going to stop trying to increase the scope of government over every aspect of our lives. They're never going to stop going into your wallet to get as much of your hard-earned money as they possibly can to do all their good deeds in government. So the battle never stops. The enemy does not sleep, nor does he slumber. And so my position is whether I'm talking to a pastor or whether I'm talking to a parent with a kid in a public school or a homeschool family, is that we're all in this together, and the laws and the decisions that people make that we put in authority through our vote, we put them there either by our inaction or by our action. And those laws are binding over us every day, 24/7, and you can't go back and get a redo after that. So whenever you hear people say the most important election in my lifetime, every election, ladies and gentlemen, is the most important election in your lifetime because it's the one in front of us right now, and there's a lot of things on the table. So as Eileen said, you have state school board is going to be up for election this fall, and we got to find out who those candidates are and that's down ballot. It's below the fold. It's people don't pay attention to that stuff. But then you also have governor and lieutenant governor and secretary of state and attorney general, and you have Supreme Court, and you have 38 members of the Senate. You got 110 House members. All of those are up for re-election this year. And so we pay attention. This is my exhortation to you. And when you meet with a pastor, and there's Andy. Hey, Andy.
Hey, how are you?
That's a good man right there. When you engage with a pastor, don't go in like they're the enemy. Go in like they're a citizen. They're a human being. They're a person. And if you have some information that you think might be helpful to them, ask them to pray about it. But I've had some pretty unhealthy interactions by trying to beat up on pastors. So I just encourage you not to do that. And I'll be finished, and I'll take questions later if you want, and turn it over to Andy. He's a pastor. He sits in the seat. He knows about all this stuff.
Yeah, don't mess with pastors. No. You never know what you'll get. It's awesome to be on here with you guys. I'm humbled to be with you. Thanks for the invitation, Eileen. So good to see you, Amy and James and everybody else. What a blessing it is to be a pastor. And Eileen gave me a couple of questions to answer here, and not very many minutes to answer them. So I'm going to talk. I'm going to work fast here. Engaging in government is if you believe the scripture, you engage in government. I don't know how else to say that. A biblical worldview, looking at the world, we have the answer to every problem that they have, and I say that with humility and not pride. And the reason why our state is in the state that it is, and so many of our local governments and even our nation is in the state of despair in so many different ways that they're in, is because the church has been silent. And, Bonhoeffer said, silence in the face of evil is itself evil. God will not hold us guiltless. Not to speak is to speak. Not to act is to act. And that needs to become the marching beat of the church and of pastors, because we have so much that we're supposed to be doing. But the bottom line is, Eileen, to answer your question, why did I get engaged in government and in politics? And that's simply because the good shepherd protects the sheep, and I'm not necessarily the good shepherd. In fact, we know I'm not good because I'm not God, but I want to be like him. And so last year, 2 years ago now, I ran for state representative, nearly won, lost by just a tiny margin. And my opponent's party spent $3.6 million slandering me for my pro-life views. It was absolutely glorious. Absolutely glorious. But I was just elected in a special election by a landslide of 10 votes to county commission. And
Thank you,
really
Andy,
excited
for
to be
making
here.
thank you for making our point that every single vote counts.
Yeah.
Every single vote, it matters, and everybody as I travel around my district and the county, people want to let me know they feel like it was their votes that caused me to win, and I'm
Well,
like, hey,
everyone can claim your victory, man. That's the
that's
way
right.
it
I
is.
love it. I love it. But how do you get church leaders and pastors to get engaged? I think a lot of people see a wall there that's not there. And really, for most people that I'm around, it's an invitation. Everybody's not going to run for office. And like James told me years ago, some people run to run and some people run to win. And my statement would be, if you keep running, eventually you'll win something. But no, I think it's important to have voices. And I think if pastors are leaders, it doesn't necessarily mean that they go hold a county commission office or a state representative office. But if pastors are leaders, they're going to step out and do things. They're going to be on a parks board, a library board, take their turn on a school board. You know, I've got a friend up in Whitehall that's on their school board. I've got a friend over on the east side of the state that's on a parks board. Let your presence and your voice be known, and it's ministry. I get to minister to people at all of these places that I go and things that I do. So I really think that our biggest problem is the church and not getting engaged. We have such a huge voice that collectively we're the lion of the tribe of Judah.
So Andy, can I stop you for a second and ask you,
Please.
so knowing that, how many people on this Zoom right now we're heavily engaged in the education
Sure.
issue against this, that the State Board of Education was pushing. How might if that comes around again, or there's another education issue, how might they approach a pastor or their priest or whoever their church leader is to be winsome enough to say, hey, would you consider letting me talk about this to the congregation?
Sure.
Or would you talk about it, because we need voices with our
Yes.
values expressed to this board? I mean, how you know it better than anyone. In fact, you both have been pastors and you're currently one, Andy. We needed every voice against coming to that state school board meeting itself, sending
Yeah.
in emails and all the rest. And what would you say to that?
Well, I think to James's point, like, don't come in hard or heavy, because that happens to us all the time.
Oh, yeah.
And manipulation, by the way, is not a gift of the Holy Spirit. So the first thing that I would do is pray about that thing a lot and get people praying. But let me just stop there and give one little thought, that if you're not going to a church that has a biblical worldview, and 8% of Christians and some 34% of pastors have a biblical worldview. If you're in a church that does not have a biblical worldview, you're probably not going to be able to convince your pastor of these things. I'm just going to be straightforward and honest.
Valid.
So then you pray about, Lord, where do you want me to be, and how do you want me to do that, right? But assuming that you're in a church that has a biblical worldview, your pastor already wants to do this and he just doesn't know it yet. So, you treat him with respect like a father, you treat him with love like a brother, and you go to him and you invite him into it and you encourage him and you trick him and tell him you'll take him out to lunch after he goes with you to the
Well, that's a
Capitol
great
or
strategy.
whatever.
Pastors will always go out to a free lunch, man.
Get your pastor involved. There's things that are going on at the Capitol for pastors. Every Thursday, every month, there's meetings that I'm aware of for pastors there that I don't make it to every single one, but get them involved. My secret is get them involved now. Get them involved with what's going on. Invite them to go to your city council meeting. invite them to go to the school board meeting and just sit with you and listen and watch. The worst time to show up is when there's a fire. The best time to show up is way ahead of that, because then you have an understanding of what's going on and how you should be engaging. But invite. Most people don't go to church because they didn't get invited. And most pastors don't get involved with these things because they're not invited. They might be condemned, but they're not invited. And I think if they're invited and encouraged to step to the front, they're leaders and they know that they're called to do that, or they wouldn't be doing it. So
just tell
I
them
hope that answers that.
tell them that your state board of education and your local school boards are mission fields, right for evangelism. Let's
Yeah.
So we have time for a couple questions from our folks, everyone on the Zoom. If you have a question, we can take a couple minutes, and then we're going to go on to policy and Catherine. And I just am cognizant that I got to keep the train on time here. But
So
thank you.
here's one
important.
question that's come in the chat. Can a sex education advisory board operate without a full board? For example, Chippewa Valley Schools in Macomb County does not have clergy, but they are conducting business as usual, including getting ready to adopt the new standards. And that's from Cheryl Miles. Thanks, Cheryl, for the question. Andy or James or Eileen, do you have any wisdom on that? Can a sex education advisory board operate without a full board? If they don't have a clergy, what should they do?
I think I don't see the language saying you have to have a clergy member. Katie, am I wrong about that? It's recommended.
It's clearly required by the
it's
statute.
required.
It's
Okay.
MCL 380.1507. They must have a clergy member. So if their board is not lawfully comprised, then actions of that board are not lawfully conducted. And there was a district on the east side of the state, I think in Taylor, recently shut down because they were not lawfully operating.
Right.
And also, if they don't adopt it properly, there could be recourse, potentially legally afterwards as well.
So Cheryl, hopefully that question helped. Katie will cover kind of how we can start to collect some of those stories, but that's significant. And that's actually one of the things we need help with, is having people go into their schools to find out if these exist. Are there any other questions before we pass it to Katie? I'll just look through how did Taylor shut down their sex education advisory board? Can sex ed be? That's one question coming in.
Is Representative Jamie Thompson still on? Because I believe
she
was involved in that.
Jamie, I don't know if you're on your camera, so we can definitely pull you in. Any questions that are highlighted?
I would just say back to that first question, really, Amy.
Yes.
If I was there and I was in that district, being a member of the clergy, I would call the superintendent and I would say, hey, I see that you have a void that you desperately need. I'm happy to help you fill that, and I'd make them reject me, right? Because that's going to give a greater legal precedent.
Very good.
For
that's an invitation
that's
for your pastor too.
Yeah,
ask your pastor to go volunteer.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
Yeah, that's the invitation. And many pastors, just keep in mind, folks, many pastors and many people don't know that clergy are supposed to be on a sex education advisory board. So this is not a fault of theirs. It's a lack of knowledge. And so we all learned a lot this past several months, right?
Yep. That's helpful. One more question. I'll let James or Pastor Andy weigh in. What do you believe is the most effective way to message? Such a large part of our fight is enticing people that affects them too. So with the lane you guys are speaking to, is there any insight you want to weigh into that other than what you've already shared, James or Andy?
I think I just speak about it all the time. I mean, these things are important. These what's happening in education, what's happening in gender identity, what's happening in redefining marriage, what's happening with devaluing life. None of those are political issues. All of those are biblical issues, and they have to be dealt with, but not just, we're coming up on a Sanctity of Life Sunday this Sunday. This should not be the only Sunday that a pastor preaches a message about the value and sanctity of life. Yeah. It should get woven into every message. And so I think just consistently messaging on these things and pointing to what's happening in culture. And it's hard to keep up on those things, but CTV and Salt and Light and so many others are great at helping me keep up to speed with what's happening in Lansing and DC.
Let me make one more point about pastors and then I have to go. But as I said earlier, they're all citizens, they're all people, they're parents, they have kids in public schools. And in every church in Michigan, 90% plus of the people in that church utilize the public schools for education. Christian and private education is less than 10% of the
Right.
population. So, as a shepherd, as a pastor, most of your congregation is affected by the things going on in public education. Therefore, it's not only a personal or practical need, it's a spiritual need for those families
Yeah.
to make sure that you are helping them navigate this world. And that would be a nice appeal to a pastor, to his shepherd's heart, to his pastoral care for his community.
Right.
Love it, James. Keep the beard, James. You look great.
All
right,
Hey, I'm trying to keep up with you, man.
As we transition, Jamie Rep Thompson is here with us. Thank you. It's a huge honor to have you. You had your hand up, so we'll throw you the microphone.
Thank you. Before I even go into introducing myself and talking about the things that I want to talk about, I want to address that question because there is someone on this call that I can't take the credit for shutting down that board. I was a part of the conversation, but the organization that was responsible for shutting down that board in Taylor, which is the city that I represent, was Moms for Liberty. And Shannon Seco is on that call. And I think if she could briefly just tell everyone on this Zoom what they did and how they were able to uncover that. If that's okay, and then I can talk a little bit later.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
That's great.
Shannon, where are you, Shannon?
I know. I'm looking for. Start speaking, Shannon. There you are. I see you.
Okay. So what we do is we've been having our parents go to the school board meetings. Our mom, she found a form on the ground for an opt-out form, and she called me and said, "What's up with this opt-out form?" And I explained all the things about sex ed advisory. And then this is just the grace of God. She went to this meeting and started asking, we went with her, we started asking all these questions and found out that their school board or their sex ed advisory board was not meeting the criteria. We called them out on it and they had to shut it down. They could not teach sex ed education. We used the law. We showed up at these school board meetings. Jamie helped us. We just had to stay on them. And she was able to make sure she had a seat on that board. So now we shut the board down. They couldn't teach sex ed. And then now they had to make it right. And now we have a seat at the table. She has a seat at the table. We have, we put the clergy message out. I talked to some churches in the area. I said, hey, we need a clergy in Taylor. So this is an example. Taylor is an example of what we should do, what we should be doing to get the parents there and stop it. That's how we do it. And Taylor is a prime example. What I plan to do is take what we did in Taylor and what we do in Dearborn and do boot camps for their parents because it's happening all over downriver. Everybody's aware of this. They are asking these questions. They're sending the emails to the school board. They're asking questions about their school board advisory board. So if we can just give these information to the parents of what to do exactly and what to look for, we can make this happen. We can do this. We can attack this in local area, school by school. So that's my goal is doing this. And Taylor, it worked. And I talked to Courtney today. She went to her first meeting. She called out right away that what they were doing was wrong. They were still doing some things that were not right. So if the parents know the law and they know what to expect when they go to these meetings, we give them the tools that they can use. It can work. These parents, this is all great information. We just have to box it together and do some one-on-one training with these parents. And that's what Moms for Liberty is doing in our county, across the state. So I just want to let you guys know that we can do this. We just need to have organization. And I love the pastors that are on here. when I need a pastor on a school, they say we need a clergy. I need to know where I can go and say, we need a clergy here, we need a clergy here. If we find out the clergy's name, we find out what church it is. If we want to know if the church is like a lukewarm church where they have
It's a good phrase.
planted, because what they're doing is myosh. They plant their own people to get on the sex advisory board, and they try to rush everything through and not let the parents know. So they try to get their own people on the boards. And my ocean them, they don't want the sex ed advisory boards. They don't like
Right.
this
Right.
Right.
because we
Yep.
have the power. So
Right.
this is great news, and we're
Yeah.
gonna make this
Shannon,
happen.
You're like a
Yeah.
hero, I think, for a lot of us. So thank you for your amazing example.
Yeah.
Eileen, I know we're like on a tight schedule, so Eileen, we'll
Yeah.
kind of
Well, I wanted to go quickly, first to Katie on, we had gotten legal and policy, we had gotten some legal questions and Salt and Light Global have attorneys, on staff as well as, we approach things from the legislative and political perspective, and also absolutely you have to know policy. And Katie is all her organization also has wonderful. You all know, I think William Wagner and other attorneys on their staff, and I lean on them. They're wonderful partners. But and I wanted her to kind of give you an update as well, just from a legal perspective, what people can do and maybe are some things in the works. And but keep in mind, when you go the legal route, it's a long time. We have a lot of things we could do right now this year with elections that we really have to do. And we should do everything in tandem because everything will work. I don't think you do it and or, it's and. So Katie, thank you. Go ahead, go for it.
Sure. So Katie Boussard with Salt and Light Global, and we have been working on this issue from the beginning in education, parental rights, religious liberty, all of those really intertwined and are some of our top issues that we work on. And a little bit of an update. I know before Christmas, a lot of people were wondering, is there a legal path forward just to challenge this? And what Eileen just said is absolutely right, that first of all, yes, we can go through the courts. That will likely take 2 to 3 years. Um, the election is less than a year away right now when we could elect new leaders who could really fix a lot of this very quickly in the legislature. So we need to send Representative Thompson and our friends in the Senate a lot more friends to work with who are like-minded. However, since we last did one of these Zooms, I will say Salt and Lake Global, we've identified 1 or 2 families that are willing to be plaintiffs that we feel have equal protection claims under the 14th Amendment. And we've connected them with good legal counsel. They are working on the beginning phases of those potential cases. And we've also been able to connect that work with the U.S. Department of Justice and really have a strong strategy to have standing, which is really a right to walk in the courthouse and say, I have a case, judge, this needs to be heard. And we are strategically trying to do that at the federal level, not the state level, because currently a lot of our Michigan judges are appointed by our governor, and they are not necessarily rule of law judges. So we're trying to be very strategic in how we do this. And so that horse has been hitched to the wagon and it's starting to roll down the road, but it's got a long journey ahead of us, and there's hope there. But again, that ballot box work is so important to vote our values this November. However, there's also the question of, what if you see something in your local district? And there's a couple different things. First of all, we've set up a page on our website. Share your story. If you can let us know what the complaint is, what the concern is, sometimes it's something that does merit immediate action. Maybe there is a legal path for that, and we really do value you sharing your story there. Other times, it also helps to tell the story and what's wrong, how kids are impacted, how families are impacted, how faith is being squelched because these radical views are displacing the values of parents in our schools. Whatever that is, if we can show the harm, it really helps us to tell the story and then change the ending of that story. So your story really does matter, whether that becomes a legislative solution or a legal solution. If we can gather your story, that's so important. And then if you're wondering, this is going to happen in my school at some point, What do I do? How do I know when to ring the bell? The biggest question to ask legally, I guess, is again, do you have that golden ticket that says you have a reason to enter the court? And you have to have harm first. So something has to have happened where someone's been hurt, where there is an actual damage in order for the court process to start. And then I'll say, I am not an attorney, by the way, but we can connect you with the attorneys that I work with in our organization, Professor Wagner and others, and they can help you through that process and guide and direct you. But the first thing is there has to be harm. So if you think about where we're sitting right now, a lot of school boards are going to take these policies up probably the end of the school year, May, June, July.
Yeah.
And until they implement them and start putting them in your child's classroom, it's hard to prove that harm. So this is a good time to do everything Eileen and the pastors and Shannon and so many others have talked about to really get organized, know what you're looking for, and be prepared. Because that moment of ringing the bell or being on your local school board and helping them to choose a different path, that's a possibility too. That preparation time is key right now. And for most of us, this just hasn't been implemented in our schools yet. So hang tight on that. Please save that link in the chat and share your stories. One other quick glimmer of hope on the legal front. I don't know if anybody's been watching the news today, but there were two what we believe are going to be landmark cases that were heard in oral arguments today. We filed briefs in both these cases, Little v. Hecox and West Virginia versus BPJ. Both of these involve college female athletes who have not received the same equal protection as any other student simply because they're female and biological males were allowed to steal their place on school sports teams for scholarships, for opportunities. Those girls lost their rights. And so today their cases were both argued in the Supreme Court. We're very optimistic about this, but please keep praying that real justice does prevail, that truth prevails. But it's been an exciting day and definitely a hopeful day to see those stories finally before the court.
Amen.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, thanks. And does anyone have any questions quickly for Katie before we go on to
or
our
drop it in the chat. I'm gonna Phil, I know you're listening. I'm gonna put you kind of move you up to the platform. We've got two VIP offices here. State Representative Jamie Thompson, who has just been a huge blessing, a hero for so many of us. And also Phil, who is from State Representative Gina Johnson's office. She's been another amazing hero. And so if there are any questions, we want to honor those. And then we're going to, I think Eileen move to, I'm sorry, I'm trying to move everybody into the right spot.
I first want to allow if you've got some questions for Katie on what she just talked about.
There aren't any questions in the chat so far.
Okay. Awesome. I just know that sometimes you think of things as you're hearing it. So I'm happy to move on right now to our wonderful legislators and staff. Give us an update. What's on the docket now? What are we looking for? What's coming? And how can citizens help you? And obviously we're going into a big election year for everybody, but if you want to share, Representative Thompson and then Phil for Representative Johnson would be great.
She's trying to unmute right now.
Yeah, unmuted. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. And as always, Citizens for Traditional Values, thank you for so much that you do for our communities, for the elections. Citizens for Traditional Values played a huge role in my election. They were able to get into a lot of churches that were not familiar with putting out these voting guides. And I think it truly changed the dynamics of a lot of communities that maybe had the appetite to do it, but didn't know how to do these voter guides. So they're so important. I jotted down some notes. I just want to let everyone know, I put my information in the chat. And the committees that I serve on, I think our committees are really important. And I urge everyone on this call, if you're not getting an email or following legislation, you can easily go to michigan.gov or search House of Representatives, search the Senate, sign up to get notified when committee hearings are happening. You can scroll through all the committees that are standing committees. A lot of our oversight committees are really exposing a lot of the fraud and abuse that has been happening within the state of Michigan. So you can view that. You can go to YouTube and you can watch committee hearings. So I serve as vice chair on health. I am a nurse. And then I also serve on family and veterans. And that's where Gina and I have been putting in a lot of the work, because the family and veterans, it is still dealing with a lot of things that we see with the brokenness with families, and things that we can do for the social welfare of our communities that really do involve our churches. So Gina and I are really champions on family and veterans, and I'm on energy and regulatory reform. Something Gina and I put out legislation. It was Gina's office. I think you did send an email about that. Number one, my legislation that we introduced right before break would require schools to get an opt-out for parents that did not want any gender expression or any language spoken of to their children in any part of the curriculum throughout the school day. So that's not going to be fun for them. That means that every time there is a class where they want to talk about gender ideology or any type of genderism, actual wackadoodle, then they have to give the parent that opt-out form. They're not going to like that. And then Gina's bill, and Phil can speak to this, but I believe Gina's bill was to change statutes so that the State Board of Education cannot circumvent the legislature to do what they did this time. So we are really hopeful to get hearings on that.
Great.
And move those forward.
And Jamie, you'll let us know when there'll be hearings coming so we can get people to them and
100%, 100%.
support you all. Okay.
And something I would like to do, I've really been talking with our Women's Caucus, and Ann Bolin, she is the chair of our Right to Life Caucus. She's a very conservative member. She is the appropriations chair. Really, I think that legislation needs to be made that we no longer have to do this opt-out, that it should be an opt-in for everything. Parents shouldn't have their children automatically put into anything within the school system, no matter what it is, unless they choose to. They shouldn't be put in there by default because they didn't opt out. And there's been a lot of research on that. Something I'd like to see people having more conversations about is the social emotional learning. I think that, and I know that Katie talks about this a lot. Moms for Liberty talks about that a lot. I don't think legislators are educated enough on social emotional learning. And I don't think that the general public really knows the dynamics that have changed in our schools on the way they're educating our kids. I was going to kind of hammer about getting our pastors involved, and I'm really glad that I came on after he said, don't shoot the messenger, don't be so hard on our pastors. Because I see 2 points that I see them. I love the concept where he mentioned we're still citizens on earth, and that's what the traditional values is trying to help our communities. We see so much that we need our pastors to be speaking to their flock, and in every appropriate way, and if it's a kind conversation or little bits of information, I can understand people that dump a whole lot to me on text and I can't digest it all. But I feel like if we don't have our pastors during their sermons or during community events talking about their parishioners' children's education, and being a part of that conversation. And I really would like to see more of our pastors engaging with the mental health crisis that's really happening with families. And I did talk with a couple teachers at my grandchildren's school, which they go to Gibraltar schools here in Brownstown. And she reaffirmed what I've been hearing a lot on social media from teachers, is that the majority of their time in the classroom, they're dealing with behaviors. It's not, they don't have the time to teach education, and we see Michigan schools failing, but even very, liberal teachers are admitting most of my time is spent dealing with behaviors and what is going on. And I started to say, well, I would assume most parents respectfully give them the benefit of the doubt. I'm sure they're disciplining their children and they're doing the best they can. And she said that a lot of the children that have, 20-some-year-old parents really aren't. The discipline is lost, the expectations is lost, the high standards are lost, the momentum with all of our children and how the dynamics have changed socially is so broken. And I know that it's a big task to try to fix, but I would just urge everyone on this call. And then last but not least, we win at the doors. And I can't say that enough. I was in a district that was +3 Democrat in 22. I was not supposed to win the seat. When we lost the whole state of Michigan, I won because I knocked the doors. I knocked the doors. I knocked the doors. I won in 24 with more support from organizations like yours. But I urge everyone on this call, if you were in a as a safe Republican district, but a nearby district and a nearby Senate race or state rep race that you know your representative or senator are safe, please help that campaign. You don't even, we need people on doors, but we need people making phone calls. We need people helping with campaign kickoffs and fundraisers. And even if it's $10, $20, every dollar matters. And I will reiterate again that please think of it as it does cost a lot of money to run campaigns, but I can say when we get qualified candidates that are willing to put in the work, we can win them when they outspend us. They outspent me by millions of dollars, and they spent millions of dollars to go on Detroit TV to try to tarnish my name and discredit me and make me look like a horrible person. And I won. I won by almost 10 points. So we have to pay attention to these elections, and we need to get out and vote, but we got to participate.
Yep,
So
absolutely. Thanks, Jamie.
you're welcome.
Phil, I know you had a couple of things that Phil Eckert is here on behalf of Gina because she was at another event. She's all over the place. And so I want to give you a couple of minutes, Phil, to share that and then leave some time for Q&A. And I see my hour is starting to close on me, so go for it, Phil.
Thank you. Representative Thompson has just said she and Representative Johnson have just introduced two pieces of legislation, House Bill 5363 and House Bill 5364. And these have been referred to the Committee on Education and Workforce. So we're hopeful we can get a committee hearing on these bills sometime in the near future and pass them through the House. However, as everyone has been saying, and I will, of course, be repeating until we have friendly faces in the Senate and friendly faces in the executive. Passing bills to the House of Representatives will unfortunately not stop this problem, as they will not pass them through the Senate. And of course, the governor will not sign them. So as I will keep saying, and everyone has been saying, this year is a very crucial year when it comes up and down the ballot for almost every single position. We need the Senate, we need the governor's office, and we do need the State Board of Education.
Bill, would you repeat those bill numbers once more? We had someone asking. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
So that is House Bill 5363, and that is Representative Thompson's, and then 5364, which is Representative Johnson's, and both of them are in education and workforce, to my knowledge.
Thank you.
And just as Mr. Moffitt said earlier, that when it comes to parents are not welcome, State Board of Education has made it very clear. The State Board of Education has also made it clear that the legislature is not welcome, at least when it comes to the majority of them. I can't speak, of course, for our two GOP members on the board. So it's one of these things that we will introduce our bills and we'll take our stand. But at the end of the day, this year is a very important year. This is a crucial year. And if we do not take back the Senate, we don't take back the governorship, I'm afraid we're going to see a lot more of this in the future.
That's valid. Could I ask really quick, Jamie, Phil, Katie, did anybody hear how the State Board of Ed meeting went today, like from the three of you? I'm just curious before we move on if there was anything to report on the State Board of Ed.
Today was a pretty benign day, and it was mostly presentations on the Michigan merit top 10 goals, that type of stuff, but nothing real controversial, and almost no voting on new policies today.
Okay. Thank you.
And I just want to, for anyone on this Zoom today, CTV is going to get involved in the Senate District 35 race. That it's a really quick race. They're having a primary February 3rd, and they're having a general to fill that state Senate seat that never got filled 2 years ago when Kristen Rivet won her congressional election, and she left the seat open. So if anyone on this Zoom is in Bay County or Midland or Saginaw County, please connect with us. We're going to do some more, on-site and other kinds of work. If we can get a senator even for 6 months, it does tie the Senate. It does give us an opportunity. So, and it's a small universe. It's like, I think, in those kind of races, 30% of the population turn out. So can you imagine if all of our revved up parents on education got involved and got out to vote, and also we're going to engage the church as much as we can. Love to hear from any of you if you're in any of those 3 counties. Just as a heads up right away, because it's happening fast. And then just keep in mind, we're also looking around for 2 strong State Board of Education candidates. We've learned firsthand now, all of us, how important those candidate positions can become. They run at the convention, and there is I'm here, well, tentatively, there is a nominating convention at the end of March.
Mhm.
So, we need two good people, because if we can even just have it a tie, we tie the hands of the state board from doing anything bad. If it's a tie, you have to start, you start taking back. So, it's a serious issue. It's one that we can affect this year. And it's really hard for candidates like State Board of Education to push through the atmosphere when you got U.S. Senate races and governor races and all these others. But just kind of noodle that in your mind.
And
Um,
Eileen, can I throw in too? And I know we're getting close to time, but I think what Eileen and I figured out, which I think Jamie would agree, I think Phil would agree, like a lot of the leaders on this call would agree, is that the issue this year, the issue, tell anybody you talk to, is education. Education, parental rights, parental consent, education, parental rights, education, parental. So if you're like a county chair, if you're a pastor, if you're trying to figure out how to get more people engaged, this is the topic. And so I just want to make sure we're, that everybody's aware that that's really what we see as a huge issue.
yeah. Um, and I don't want to take all the air in the room, but does anyone have any questions or things they want to bring up before we
We have
we
2
wrap
minutes,
everything
about
up?
2 minutes to. While we're looking for any questions, let me just throw this out. Thank you everyone for joining us. Our next one is going to be, our goal right now is to do this on a monthly basis as a service to all of you. So what our hope is that, and please, if there's any final questions, drop them in the chat. As we do this monthly, the next one will be February 10th. Our goal is that this will be a place where you can come gather information, cutting edge on what's going on with education, but that you will also be encouraged and inspired, and you'll walk away with kind of calls to action. So what we're hoping is that everything that you're hearing here, from the bill numbers to how awesome it is to have our state reps that are so engaged on this issue, that you will share this. So share the content we put out, share the emails we put out, share the Salt and Light Global, invite people to this. We had over 80 people that registered for this. There is definitely a hunger for this information. So our next one will be February 10th. If you, 7 p.m., you guys will all receive a follow-up email probably by tomorrow with links of the people that have talked. We have tons of resources, so do let us know if there's any specific questions. Eileen, no questions that have popped up.
Yeah.
If I could, just one thing before I go, something that you guys gave as an action item that I think I would love to hear you reiterate. It was very simple. It was like a 4-step thing. I think when everyone leaves this call, to make that call to your superintendent or school board and just simply ask, do you have a sex education board?
Yeah.
When do they meet?
Yeah.
Who is on the board? Can you reiterate that, Eileen or Katie?
Yeah. So some quick questions. Exactly, Jamie. I was just gonna say, here's a wrap up of
Our minds are
takeaway. Does your board have, if you're talking to your superintendent or your district superintendent, and even probably their principals don't know this either, but does your school have a sex education board? Who's on the board and when did their terms expire? When does the board meet? How do I apply to serve on the board? I'm interested, or I know someone who's interested, or I have a clergy member they're supposed to be on. Do they know that are they invited? Do you invite the clergy to be on the board? And I would like to see the curriculum, both for our health class and our sex education class. And that's more than 3, but we have it in a handout.
I just put it in the chat. Yep.
Yeah. And just get, I don't want to burden you all feeling like, oh my gosh, I can't do all this. But if you could get a team like of 3 of you to divvy up some of the meetings, attend your school board meetings, and think about, maybe go to coffee together and think about, okay, who could we get to run for the Trenton School Board or for the Forest Hills School Board. I'm in Forest Hills, and I'm going to sit down. I don't know if Holly's on here, but every school board area is going to have openings, and if it's not us, it's going to be somebody else, and we'd much rather be at the table than always fighting. So I'm going to leave it there. You heard a lot. And we'll follow up with an email tomorrow of just kind of reiterating some of the things and some tools that you can have. And please always feel free to email myself or call me or Amy or Katie, and send your stories. If you see something going wrong at your school and it's questionable, send that story to Katie Broussard at Something Like Global. So we want to be a resource to you, and thank you, everybody. Thanks, Phil and Jamie, for joining us with the legislative side of things. We love our legislators. We love keeping them in the loop. They've got a lot on their plates, but yeah. Thank you, everyone. I'll just say good night. We're hitting 8 o'clock.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Please watch your email, and we will send you a follow-up and let us know if there's any outstanding questions. We appreciate you and hope that you will tell your friends and pastors about this encouraging hour, and we look forward to seeing you again on February 10th. Blessings to everyone.